Greetings, everyone. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I'm from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com, and I am a copyright and plagiarism expert with 15 years experience in the field. And today I want to talk about goddesses, a bunch of goddesses, actually. To be specific, 33 goddesses, or to be more accurate, 33 paintings of goddesses done by one Jody Abssy of San Diego. Now, I want to make it clear before I jump into this, my goal with this video is not to beat up on Jody as the plagiarist in this case. Yes, I'm drawing attention to her story, but let's be clear, she's an 81-year-old woman. She rented this gallery space, happened to get some positive media attention, and even though she is an artist and has been an educator and should have known better, she has some pretty wrong ideas about originality that I want to focus on, because I think her case might explain some of the copying we've been seeing elsewhere, especially like the Butch Hartman case, to give you an idea of why artists, in some cases, do what they do when using reference images. I think Jody's case may have shined a very interesting light on that, and I want to talk about it. But the goal is not to beat up on her. It's punching down. I don't find that interesting or fun, so just keep that in mind. But to real quickly tell Jody's story, as I said, she rented some space at Gallery 21 in San Diego, and Gallery 21 is a volunteer-operated art gallery, and she did an exhibit, or started an exhibit at the very least, featuring 33 works that she had painted of various goddesses, both contemporary and ancient, and was using it as a tool to educate the community about those goddesses and the history around them. She got positive media coverage, both in the local newspaper and the local CBS affiliate. Both ran spots on her, and it was getting a lot of great attention. It was a very nice thing in the middle of a pandemic, and people were really enjoying it. Unfortunately, the news coverage drew attention to the fact that the paintings were not original. Now, she had painted them all herself, and there's no accusation of tracing, but as we'll show in a minute, they are very similar to earlier works from various artists, and we're going to do some side-by-sides in just a second. The result of that was Gallery 21 canceled the exhibition. It stopped it about halfway through, took it down because she had signed an agreement saying that the work was original when indeed it was not. And she has apologized for it, and we'll get into her apology on the flip side of things because it's her explanation that I really want to hone in on. But first things first, what do you say we take a look at the alleged, or rather just actual plagiarisms, by taking a quick trip to monitor number 2. Here we have the first of the two images I want to show you. Both of these images, by the way, come from the CBS 8 website. They have a great article and video on it there. I'll give a link to it in the description. But here on the left, you have the original work, which is done by artist Selena Finich. And then on the right, the version created by Jody Abssy. Now, you don't need me really to point out the similarities between these two. They're very, very obviously the same painting, just done by two different hands. There's not any tracing involved. And remember, I use the term tracing very strictly to refer to the actual act of tracing. This is more akin to what happens when an artist attempts to recreate a painting, like a student, for example, recreating a painting they're seeing in their own style and with their own hand, but yet copying nearly all the elements. And the elements copied do get very, very specific. One thing I noticed immediately looking at it is how the hair branches here come to a very similar point at both of them. And also, even though Selena's version has a lot more detail here around the sides of the legs, both versions have the exact same oval with the little hook of the hair in there. Same thing there. I'm not a historian. I do not know the history of this particular goddess and how she is normally portrayed, if those are things that are common, but they leap out instantly as things that are very, very similar. And overall, the color choices, the structure, the pose, everything else is the same. This is very much what you would expect if one painter tried to copy another, which is, like I said, something that students do all the time, but it's not a way to create an original work. Now, the second one makes it even more obvious in ways. And one thing I find interesting is how, in this case, well, first off, on the left, you have a 2012 work by Joe Jason, and on the right, you have Jody Abssy's version. But look at the hand, the left hand on both of them, the spear, and how they both have the exact same structure with the way the fingers are placed upon it. I'm not going to, it looks like Jody's has 6 fingers on it because the thumb would be hidden, but I don't know if that's just this low resolution scan or the painting. But otherwise, the hands are identical. The way the hair wraps around the spear and her hand is identical. The over-under pattern is identical in both. Um, yeah, the color choice, once again, the color choices, everything else, virtually identical. Once again, not an expert. I do not know how this particular goddess is normally portrayed. I don't know which of these elements are just part of, the lore and the history of this goddess and what is unique to each artistic representation. But even with such similar source material, these paintings have a lot of very, very specific overlap that is just impossible to ignore. And it's easy to see why people were quickly pointing it out when they saw these images on the news. And to that end, Jody did admit to using these works. She did admit to copying it. However, her reasoning for why she didn't think she was committing plagiarism is the actual focus of this video. So let's get back to the regular camera. Now, Jody, for her part, has acknowledged and admitted that she copied the painting. She's not made any effort to deny it. And in fact, she has apologized for it. But she had an interesting quote about her reasoning and what she actually did that I want to share and make kind of the focus of this, what remains of this video. She said to CBS 8, "My intention was to create something original by making enough changes to call it my own. I didn't do that. But I didn't intentionally infringe on anyone's copyright." Now, we're not going to get into the conflation of copyright and plagiarism there. Yes, I do both, but they are different things, indeed. That said, her intention was to create something original by making enough changes to call it her own. That is such an interesting line. And when I put up the article, several people on Twitter said that that was the worst response to plagiarism allegations they had ever heard. And it was made worse by the fact that she was an educator and that she was trying to use this as an educational tool. But yeah, it is a bad response. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. But it's a common one. How many teachers out there have had students come to them and say, "Oh, I thought I paraphrased. I thought I altered it enough to be a paraphrase, or I thought I altered it enough to make it my own words." A lot of people seem to think that you can reach originality by just taking what someone else has done and modifying it somehow. And that's not how it works. We all have influences. We all have reference works. We all have things that guide us. But ultimately, for something to be original, it has to come from within you. You internalize those influences, and then you put out a new work. You don't simply change an existing work to create an original one. Even if she had changed enough to make it virtually unrecognizable, it would still be a derivative work, at least from an ethical standpoint. Maybe not a legal one, but from an ethical standpoint, it would still be derivative. She would still be creating an unoriginal work, no matter how much she changed it, because she started with someone else's work. And this is something I talk about with students all the time. In fact, I'm giving a talk on this later this month in a conference, a virtual conference, about writing and creating in a clean room. And the idea is that when you're writing a paper, and I speak about this in the academic context, you keep your notes and your research completely separate from the document that you're writing in. And whenever you paste something into that document that you were writing in, it immediately gets its citations. You do not wait to go put it back later. You do not say, "I'm going to edit it, manipulate it, and do whatever to it." You cite it, you quote it, you do what is required to immediately. That way you don't forget and you don't commit accidental plagiarism. But yes, Jody said in her mind she made enough changes to make it her own. You saw the work. You decide. You can be the judge too on this. I don't feel she did, but then again, I don't think any amount of changes to another person's work is going to give her an original work. So my hope is that, as bad as her response was, that we can learn from that, and maybe we can start to change the way we think about originality and the way we teach originality, so that way others will not fall into this trap. Jody's mistake does not have to be everyone's mistake. Well, on that note, everyone, that's my brief look into this. Like I said, there's 33 of them. According to the gallery, they had identified the original paintings for over half of them. Obviously, we're only looking at a couple here. It could take all day. But I appreciate you spending this time with me. I hope it helped. And until next time, this is Jonathan Bailey, signing off.